For those of you who are joining us for the first time and are new to the Tech Council, the San Francisco Tech Council is a multi-sector collaborative that builds government, business, nonprofit, and consumer collaboration to advance digital inclusion for older adults and adults with disabilities.
San Francisco Tech Council's mission is driven by the core belief that the most effective way to address the complexities of connecting all San Franciscans, as well as to harness opportunities for innovation, is through collaboration across all sectors. Launched in 2015, the Tech Council is a one-of-a-kind community table around which our partners sit and discuss issues and organize activities to advance digital inclusion. Thank you for joining us. You can find us on Twitter at SF Tech Council, LinkedIn at SF Tech Council, and on our website, www.sftechcouncil.org.
So that brings us to today's topic, which is the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, which was created by Congress in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. It is a federal initiative to help lower the cost of high-speed internet for eligible households during the COVID pandemic. And EBB provides discounts for broadband services for eligible households, as well as benefits that can be applied to connected device costs from participating broadband service providers. So I'm going to hand over to Bethany Schwartz, who's a program manager at the Neighborhood Tech Connect program, which is part of the Community Living Campaign. And she will moderate today's Q&A discussion.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation. Aloha, ahi, ahi, good and warm and pleasant good evening. Good evening here at the FCC, FCC in DC. My name is Lyle Ishida. I am chief of the FCC's Consumer Affairs and Outreach Division. We are 12 folks who are dedicated to support consumers, Consumer Affairs and Outreach Division, in terms of outreach, education, messaging. And I also run, as part of my division, the Section 504 of the Rehab Act, which include accessibility for people with disabilities. I have a staff of 3, soon to be 4 ASL interpreters. We work with an alternate format specialist for people who are blind or are visually impaired. And I'm going to come to sort of that part too, because I understand that's an interest of this group in terms of being able to reach people. And Andrew gave a really great sort of a thumbnail sketch about the program. It's $32 billion to support low-income households and people and households who are impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Its base discount is a $50 discount for broadband services and sort of equipment rentals. If you live on tribal lands, and there are a number of tribal lands in both Northern and Southern California, irrespective of your enrollment in the tribe, if you just live on the federal recognized borders of the tribal lands, that discount gets bumped up to $75. For participating providers, and this is not a requirement, so this is an option, but there are providers who will provide a one-time discount of up to $100 to the consumer for the purchase of a laptop, a desktop computer, or a tablet, if the consumer kicks in anywhere between $10 and $50. So before I get any further, and it's on my slide deck, but I'll kind of work around that now. In chat is the link to our participating EBB participating vendors page, which is aggregated by state. And so if you'll take a look at that link and drill down to state, you'll see these providers, and some will have this like blue check mark on the right-hand side. These are the guys who are participating in the equipment discount program, and the people without are not. So that's sort of, I want to kind of draw your attention to that link. Hope you bookmark that in your further assistance with people in your circles. So that's sort of the discount. Most people a lot of people just think about it as sort of a add-on to Lifeline. And I think we all know about Lifeline, right? It provides a discount for low-income folks based on either 125% or below of the poverty rate, or participation in any number of public assistance programs. But the program is particularly structured to also assist folks who have had dislocation, jobless dislocation because of the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the qualifying criterias to enroll into EBB is a little funky. The rules say that if you experience a substantial loss of income due to a job loss or furlough since February 29th, 2020 last year, and your household is below 99,000 for single filers and 198,000 for joint filers, you're approved. And what we've noticed is that a number of consumers and consumer-facing organizations and navigators they get caught up with the word substantial loss of income. And so that generates a whole bunch of email and confusion about, well, what is a substantial loss of income? That's really subjective. And so I think I'd like to message to all of you when you get the PowerPoint deck, or if you're helping people enroll through USAC or want to kind of message folks out, not to focus about the substantial loss of income, but focus on the job loss or furlough since February 29th, 2020. You're going to qualify if you check that substantial loss button when you enroll at USAC, and you provide either a furlough notice or a copy of an unemployment either statement. It goes different by things by state, right? Or a 1099 or whatever. That's sort of also a target audience of ours. There are a number of industries, right, that across states that have suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm from Hawaii, right? The tourist industry can't fly in. There are a lot of people who were impacted by that. And so irrespective of the other qualification criteria, which I'm going to go over now, for people who have been impacted negatively in terms of job loss or furlough from COVID-19, that's okay. That's a really good qualifying criteria to sign up and enroll for EBB under. Other qualifying criteria for EBB include, so if anyone in the household, doesn't have to be the household head, has received a Pell Grant, so that would be a youngster, right, in the current award year. Anyone who has a child receiving benefits under the free or reduced school lunch program or the school breakfast program, either last school year or the current school year, or they meet an eligibility of a participating provider's existing COVID-19 or low-income program. There are any number of those types of really high-profile programs, mostly by big companies. If you meet them, then you kind of qualify as well for the EBB. And then the big criteria is that if any household that qualifies for Lifeline qualifies for the EBB. And just to, again, level set, I'm going to run through this quickly. You qualify for EBB, for Lifeline, and therefore EBB, by having a household of less than 135% of the federal poverty line, or a member of the household participates in SNAP, which is formerly the food stamps, Medicaid, SSI, federal public housing assistance, including Section 8, any number of veterans pensions and survivors benefits, and tribal programs like the TANF and what they call in tribal in Indian countries, sort of the commodities programs. So there's a big net to catch for consumers. And so we'd love to sort of have your help in messaging that information. One thing that you should be aware of is lexicon in terms of qualification. And we use the term household purposefully. So qualifying households. And that's because a household is just any member of or group of people who live together and share money. That's really what it is. But there may be multiple households in a single structure. And so that's the reason, and they could all individually in the same structure, but they have multiple families, multifamily housing, etc., have multiple beneficiaries for the EBB. There will be a household worksheet on the EBB enrollment site. You don't enroll with the FCC because we're a regulatory agency. You enroll with the Universal Service Administrative Company, USAC, usac.org, at the enrollment site, which is getemergencybroadband.org. And that household worksheet really helps you drill down when you're not sure, because maybe instead of you have a multi-generational family situation, but not quite sure because uncle is maybe contributing or not. So that worksheet would really help you. In terms of multi-unit dwellings, like apartment buildings, nursing homes and group homes, yet that's set up also dependent on circumstance for multiple units to be able to qualify for the EBB, dependent on how the landlord or property manager provisions broadband or internet to that building. So the real simple way is if each apartment is on their own, well, they're all eligible to apply if they meet the eligibility requirements. If it's a provision where the landlord or property manager is set up so that they have a master account and then they allocate a bill to each unit, then we're going to ask, and please let folks know that the manager or landlord call USAC on their hotline to kind of work out sort of the rules of that, because that sort of household definition kind of is trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, but we're going to be dedicated to try and get that done. Also, in terms of, I don't want to lose the Lifeline link for low-income consumers who are on Lifeline, EBB does not replace it. You can have both Lifeline and EBB going simultaneously, particularly because EBB is a temporary program. That $32.1 billion, is eventually going to go away, or the EBB will expire 6 months after the Secretary of HHS declares the COVID-19 pandemic over, whichever comes first. So we don't want anyone to sort of lose Lifeline and think they have to give it up. You can have both. And if you're a Lifeline enrollee, you don't have to apply it to your Lifeline plan. So for instance, a lot of Lifeline participants have a home internet broadband setup. There is nothing stopping you from using your EBB benefit to get a mobile phone, which are through an EBB mobile provider, and have both. That's perfectly fine.
So you're saying somebody can go to a mobile provider?
Yes.
But they can't get a phone from a mobile provider.
It depends. Right? It depends on the plan, the mobile plan. So there's no singular rule about that. Most mobile providers will, when you get a plan, sort of help you with the plan or not. So there are example, I'm going to use vernacular here, and please don't quote me, but sort of Obama phones, right? So those are Lifeline mobile phones. So there may be setups similar to that for EBB depending on provider. But thank you for the question to help me.
But in California, there aren't many people who are providing equipment. And when I read the FCC guidelines, it says desktop, laptop, or computer that the EBB is eligible for.
So that
can be applied to. So if a mobile provider throws in a phone, that's their choice. But I can't take the $100 device money and expect to pay somebody for a mobile phone.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, in the sense that when you take a look at the getting emergency, how to apply and get emergency broadband things, our broadband providers, you will see with the check mark in California listed providers with both sort of mobile and home setup. and with a link to their pages. So that gives you opportunity as the consumer to be able to, shop around, figure out who's doing what to whom. Because one of the things that the way the law was written is that we had opportunity to give providers flexibility to be able to structure how they wanted to give their, participate in EBB. And so there is no, sort of a master EBB plan that's exactly the same across all carriers, where every carrier is proscribed to do it this way exactly. So I think shopping around really is a really good thing for us, and also gives flexibility to consumer. But thank you for the question.
One other question with regard to devices, and this is from Mark. He's asking for connected devices. You may see this in your chat box. Because providers can be reimbursed up to $100 and a household pays $10 to $50, is the total value of the device capped at $150?
No, it's not. So devices are $100, but they're provided by the participating broadband provider. You do not get a voucher and go to Best Buy and say, here, I want to buy a, MacBook Air, and here's my $100 coupon. So those things are provided by the broadband provider. And so it may be all of the three, it may be two of the three, it may be one of the three, depending on the number of, what the providers plan to, which is why, again, we provide you the information of who's participating. Like in California, you see the blue check marks on the right-hand side. But you're going to get it through the provider, and to your consumer support is going to be $100. There may be a bleed over cost for that as well from the provider to make them whole. It may not. They might supplement it and hope that you stay. So that's the thing that flexibility sort of resists my ability to just give you a yes or no answer, because every provider is different. But that's sort of the scope of how the equipment discount works. Did that make sense? Did I step on myself?
It does, but I have a question that's a follow-up question to that, because I've been surveying the list of providers and the kind of devices that they provide. And so what I hear you saying is that largely it's up to the provider to determine the type of device they want to make available to the consumer through the EBB. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so I see that a lot of the providers that have check marks are not fixed broadband providers. They're mobile providers.
Yep.
And some of these I don't see any info about a tablet or even a hotspot. And so I have to kind of assume at this point that a lot of these providers who are offering connected devices are going to be providing cellular devices, cell phones.
There may be. So
Okay. Yeah.
So I represent the FCC. I really want to be careful
Great.
here, but I also want to communicate well. So for a lot of traditional cable and landline providers, I've been doing these things for a bit, right? They tell me individually, so different challenges for those sorts of folks are supply chain. So they're not used to, I'm not going to pick on Comcast, but pick your own, right? They're not used to, they don't have a supply chain for computers or laptops that they sell on the Comcast store or the Verizon store or whatever, right? And so it makes kind of sense to me when they tell us that. And that's why a lot of also the big landline cable companies are not participating. It's because they don't have a structure, a corporate structure and a logistical structure, a purchasing structure, storage and other sorts of things structure to be able to effectively do that. Whereas the mobile community, their business, their basic business plan also involves not just the signal, but the device. So one of the things that we really want to make sure that folks are aware of and consumers are aware of, the EBB provider cannot extend the consumer beyond the boundaries of EBB funding without getting a specific okay and sign up from the broadband provider, so that there's no bill shock or something that happens like, hey, what happened to my subsidy? Oh yeah, well, we just actually rolled you into a different plan. So what we want to do is we want to make sure, while we are going to try and take care of things on the carrier end, we want to make sure that we have great awareness and activation of consumers and consumer facing advocates and ambassadors to let us know if they find any instances of that, and send it to us at the broadband benefit at fcc.gov. My team checks that email address all the time, because what we'll do is we'll help the consumer actually file the FCC informal complaint and start the process against the provider. So to apply for the EBB, we're going to ask folks to do sort of three options. You can go to getemergencybroadband.org, which is USAC's website, hit the apply now and kind of work through the process. You can contact a broadband provider directly and learn about their application process. And I want to be really clear about one thing. If your consumers or membership or people in your circle are going through a broadband provider, like I know Comcast has some, and I'm sorry they're not here to talk about it. We're going to ask you, because it is a sort of a mandate with the Lifeline verifier, that they have to do it in person. You can't do it, and I understand it's COVID-19 world, but you can't do that sort of electronically by email and such. For people who just have a distrust of computer systems and PII, et cetera, going through the system, mail-in application works just as well. You get it from the USAC website, getemergencybroadband.org. You download it, you fill out the paperwork, and you mail it to an address that's available at the website in London, Kentucky. As a hint, we don't want consumers to go back and forth with USAC. So do attach your qualifying proof or criteria. Again, this could be like if you're qualifying under a job loss, like your layoff notice or your unemployment program procedures. And then lastly, I would just want to talk to you all about the FCC's outreach toolkit. So the outreach toolkit, which I think I saw in chat as a link, the outreach toolkit exists for you. So what it is it's a series of functional social media pre-populated things like draft tweets, Facebook posts, a draft press release, a draft blurb for your internal newsletter or external newsletter. There are printables, and if these days maybe people are not printing but they're emailing. These include sort of fact sheets in 12 different languages. They are tip cards, there's posters, there are Instagram ready photos, ready for sort of a thing that you can put in a Instagram series. Everything I just mentioned are not just free, but editable. So throw your logo on there, throw your address on there. About half of the materials we have are printed purposefully blank and back, so that when you want to put a local California FAQ, or when you want to put a meeting announcement in your neighborhood or whatever, you can use the back on that. And then we have videos and public service announcements, including a video in American Sign Language, a video specifically to our friends in Indian country, as well as regular video to explain things. And again, steal them, upload them, forward them around as you want. They're free, they're public use. We have public service announcement radio ads for both general consumers and for folks who live in Indian country, again, we'd love to get that out. Separately, if anyone, I heard that we work with the disability community a bunch. So we also work, as I'd mentioned before in my division, with alternate formats. And so if anyone working with seniors want anything in large print, for instance, or have consumers who need a Braille, by all means, you're going to send our team an email at FCC 504, that's all one word, FCC 504 at fcc.gov. We'll do it on demand, again, free. It'll take as long as demand. It's a demand-based thing, right? We're gonna have one person making Braille on our this massive Braille machine. But for large print handouts and such, those tend to be a little easier to turn around. You'll get a UPS sort of direct mailing to wherever you want it. Also, we have other alternate formats. There are people who want audio files or things like that as well. So that sort of is, believe it or not, the short pitch. I wish it were shorter. One last pitch is our webpage. It's fcc.gov/broadband benefit. At that site, you can do a number of things. You can ask for a speaker, which is how I got here. You can sign up to be a partner, which is how you're going to get partnered emails. And you don't have to be a big national group. You can be a local partner, like Kiwanis clubs are partners. And also you can have access and links to both the outreach toolkit I mentioned, direct links to the how to applying on USAC, as well as if you run into problems with carriers, a direct link to the complaint, FCC's informal complaint system, and our email inbox, which is how you correspond with me. So now I'm done.